I'd like to open the meeting, the regular meeting of the Peabody City Council for July 11th, 2019, 7:30 p.m. the Frank L. Wiggins Auditorium. This meeting is being televised live on Cable Channel 9 and is being taped by Peabody Access Television and is also being recorded by our City Council stenographer. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Can I get a motion to receive a late communication from His Honor the Mayor?
Moved.
On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. In His Honor the Mayor, I welcome you to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, good evening, Council. It's great to be here for a very special moment, I think, for the city, a historic moment in many ways. For the first time in 18 years, we are naming a new Peabody Fire Chief, and very proud to be here today to introduce and ask for the appointment of our new Fire Chief here in the city of Peabody. I want to state that we had 3 excellent candidates for the position. We had a assessment center that was performed by our Human Resources Director, Beth O'Donnell, who did just an outstanding job. It was certainly a situation where I felt that we had excellent internal candidates. It was an opportunity for us to save money, and I didn't want to go forward and hire a company to come in at $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 in order to do a full assessment center. I asked Ms. O'Donnell to perform the assessment center, take bits and pieces of other scenarios and other programs that we've seen in the past and create an assessment center to put the 3 candidates through. We had a committee that was formed of Mayor of Woburn, Scott Galvin. We had 2 retired chiefs, Chief O'Brien out of Melrose and Chief St. Pierre out of Salem, police chief, as well as a resident, I think all of you know, Richard Tranfaglia, who is a retired human resources director himself. The candidates were put through a pretty rigorous full-day assessment center composed of and comprised of different scenarios, different tasks, responsibilities, and a great deal of questions regarding the position and their background. All 3 did an excellent job, but ultimately who rose to the top was soon-to-be Chief Joe Daly. Joe just had an outstanding career with the Peabody Fire Department. He came as a City of Peabody graduate of the Peabody Public Schools and went on to a very decorated military career serving in the United States Air Force. He served in Operation Desert Storm, Operation Desert Shield, graduated or left with an honorable discharge from the United States Air Force with the rank of sergeant. He began his career in the Peabody Fire Department and has steadily worked his way up the ranks, first as a lieutenant in 1996, as a captain in 2001, and then as a deputy chief in 2010. I think, as you see here, evidenced by the large amount of firefighters that we have here today, people who are friends of Joe and his family, that he's held in very high esteem. We were very impressed with his calm demeanor, his professionalism, his knowledge of the department, his knowledge of fire safety, and we thought he was the right person to lead us moving forward and move the fire department forward in a very positive way. I'm very proud to introduce today to you as our new fire chief and ask for his appointment. We have an official swearing-in ceremony set up for the 18th, next Thursday night here at the Wiggins Auditorium, I believe at 5:30, in which he would be formally sworn in by our excellent city clerk, Tim Spanos. But I think this is a great appointment for the city, and I think Joe Daly is the right person to lead the department going forward. So I'm here certainly to answer any questions. Chief Daly is here as well with his family, and I'm very happy to put his name forward to the City Council.
Mr. Chairman, may I move to follow the mayor's recommendation to approve the chief of police, the next chief of police, to Joe Daly. Excuse me. I'm just so excited for you, Joe. The fire chief, Joe Daly. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas. Yes. Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Charist.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Absolutely yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, 1 absent.
Chief, if you could, please state your name and address for the record.
Joseph Leo Daly, 3 Hood Terrace, Danvers, Massachusetts.
Chief, you can speak to all of us.
Thank you very much. That was awesome. I'm very excited to be here tonight. We have a wonderful city and a wonderful department. Our department's in great shape, and a big reason is the unprecedented support of this administration and this council. I will work hard to maintain that relationship and maintain your support. I will always be prepared. Anytime I come before you, I will be prepared, and you can take that to the bank. We have, like as I said, the department's in great shape. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm just pumping the tires. And with the gentleman in the back row, and with you people, the mayor and the administration, we're going to make this a stronger department and a department that people will be prouder of. Thank you very much for all your support. I'm very humbled by it.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just very briefly, I want to commend the mayor for this choice and the process by which he took to interview candidates, excellent candidates. All 3, I believe, were from within the department. And I just can't commend you enough, Mayor, for this choice. I've known Joe Daly for a long time, 45 years or so. We both went to the Farnsworth School and grew up together. And I have this one story. It was Higgins Junior High at the time, and it was National Skip Day. I had permission. I don't know if my brother John had permission to skip, but I did. And so we're all riding our bikes back from the beach, and one kid got sick and couldn't ride the bike home, and that huge hill that you're riding back from Nahant through Lynn, that huge hill, I forget the name of the street. But there's Joe Daly, there's 40 of us taking over the whole street, puffing, trying to get up the hill, and there's Joe Daly driving his bike while leading the other kid's bike home. And looking back now, I mean, there's a fire chief looking out. Your property and your safety, even back when he was a kid, was number one. He's just such a high quality person. He's got a strong character. He will be fair and impartial, and he will do a great job keeping the city safe. And I remember that day. It's a great memory I have of you showing just what a great person and a good kid you were, and what a great chief you're going to be. So I'm so happy and I'm so proud of you, Joe.
Thank you, Ann.
Any other councilors? Chief, I just want to say I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of your firemen over the last few months, and each and every one has spoken extremely highly of you. And I know the mayor had a tough choice, but I know that we all knew that you were the right choice, especially hearing from these people. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Like I told you before, there was one concern that the assessment committee had, and the mayor and Beth O'Donnell brought to my attention was the closeness that I have to the department. And they were concerned of when it comes to discipline issues. And I assure them that I hold myself to a higher standard. I hold my family to a higher standard. I hold my friends to a higher standard. They are my friends, and they will be held to a higher standard.
Thank you very much. Kind of surreal. We just have to accept an additional set of minutes after that. But thank you all for coming.
Motion to receive
Motion to receive. That's
and
two
accept,
separate.
excuse me.
Thank you. With that, councilors, we'll move to item 4A on the agenda. The clerk will read the notice. Councilors, is there any objection to a 5-minute recess? We'll take a 5-minute recess. Call the council back in session and revert to item 4A on the agenda, and the clerk will read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, July 11th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. in the Franco-Wiggin Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass. on the application from Auditorium Brotherhood of the Divine Holy Ghost, Inc., 20 Harley Street, Peabody, Mass. to amend their current entertainment license to allow for live entertainment outdoors in their outdoor dining area for the following dates only at said 20 Harley Street, Peabody, Mass. Friday, July 12th, Saturday, July 13th, and Sunday, July 14th, 2019. Peabody City Council, Councilor John G. Turco, City Council President.
Is there a petitioner that would like to come to the podium? Petitioner for the Holy Ghost, Azarian Brothers of the Divine Holy Ghost. Sir, please state your name and address for the record and tell us what you'd like to do.
Name is Jose Mario Pinto. I live on 11 Queenston Street, Peabody.
Thank you, sir. It's just kind of self-explanatory. You just want to add entertainment?
It's 3 days entertainment. We usually been doing that. Most councils know about it. It's pretty much the same. Friday, and we'll start probably after 5 o'clock because everybody goes to work and everything. Saturday may start a little bit earlier, terminating at 11 o'clock both days. On Sunday, we plan on starting around 1 p.m. And terminate around 10 p.m. We have some entertainment, some food, and some stuff. So it's pretty much how we've been doing. The councils pretty much know what's going on, and more of the same.
Thank you very much.
You know,
Is there anybody here in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody in the audience that would like to speak in favor? Anybody in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to the petition? Anybody here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Councilor Matsoulis. Oh, Councilor McGinn, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've spoken with Mr. Pinto many times over past years, and more recently this year with Mr. Tosti. This is an annual event. I think most councilors are aware of that. I try to stop by every year and see how things are going. It's generally I would say not generally, it is a very well-run event. People seem to be having a good time. I do put conditions on this every year, and the reason for that is some issues that went back several years ago, but they have not been issues in any recent years. In fact, I've had no complaints on this in recent years since I've been on the council, since these conditions have been in place. So they're fully aware of it, fully. It's not burdensome in any way, and helps the event run smoothly in cooperation with the police department and so forth. So I'm fully supportive of the application and defer to other councilors.
Council Matsoulis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also am in full support of this special permit. Let me tell you, it's a weekend of seeing your friends, having great food, enjoying the company of your neighborhood. I've been going to these affairs, to the Holy Ghost, when it was in my ward, Ward 3. I've been going to these affairs since I was 12 years old. And I go every year, and I look forward to, I bring my family, and I recommend councilors, all you councilors who are running for re-election, I'd suggest you go down here, say hello to everybody, let them get to know you. It's a big voting block. They're terrific people, and it's something I look forward to enjoying myself this weekend. See you then. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to close the public hearing.
All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to approve the application from the Azarian Brother of the Divine Holy Ghost, 20 Holly Street, Peabody, Mass., to amend their entertainment license to allow for live entertainment outdoors in their outdoor dining area for the following dates only at said 20 Holly Street, Peabody, Mass., Friday, July 12th, Saturday, July 13th, and Sunday, July 14th, 2019, with the following conditions: that Mr. Silva and Mr. Tosti make themselves known to the Peabody Police Detail officers as the points of contact for the Holy Ghost should any issues arise, and that as representatives of the Brotherhood, they will address any such complaints in a timely fashion, that the stage be oriented in such a way that the volume be set to minimize noise impact on residential and business neighbors, that all entertainment shall promptly cease at the hours specified on said license, 11 p.m. on July 12th and 13th, and 10 p.m. on July 14th, that a permit be obtained from the Peabody Fire Department for open burning or fire pit, and that the property owner must provide adequate number of covered receptacles to allow for the storage of garbage and rubbish in a manner that so as not to attract pests or create nuisance for abutters. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Matsoulis.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, 1 absent.
Councilors, we're going to move to item 4C, and I'm going to ask that B is off the... Council, we'll move to item 4B, and Council Sasslaw.
Thank you, Council President. I received communication for item 4B. Petitioner request to withdraw without prejudice and schedule a, re-advertise and schedule a special permit hearing on August 22nd. So move.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. And now we can move to item 4C, which I will ask the Dean of the Council, Councilor Gravel, if he would like to chair the meeting.
Clerk will read the record for item 4C.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as a special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, July 11, 2019, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wiggins Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., on the application from Pilot Freight Services, 310 McClellan Highway, East Boston, Mass., for a special permit seeking to use a portion of the premises as a truck terminal at 13 Centennial Drive, Peabody, Mass., is filed in accordance with sections 4.2.6, 6.1.1, 6.1.4, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. Peabody City Council, Councilor John G. Turco, City Council President.
If the petitioner would state his name and address for the record, then tell us what he's looking at.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Ethan Vonzalitis. I'm an attorney practicing law at 246 Andover Street in Peabody, and I am here on behalf of the petitioner with respect to this evening's application. Pilot Freight Services is a freight forwarding company. They have over 75 facilities throughout the United States and Canada. One of their current locations is in East Boston, and they desire to relocate from East Boston to here in the city of Peabody. The petitioner has a lease agreement to occupy a portion of the building at 13 Centennial Drive. That agreement is obviously subject to obtaining this evening's special permit. The property contains one commercial building. The building contains about 136,000 square feet of leasable area, and it's situated on a lot that contains just a little over 12 acres. That building currently has two tenants. One of the tenants is an office use. They do business as McHugh, and they occupy about 18,000 square feet of the building. The other tenant is DHL, and they too are also a freight forwarding business. They occupy the remaining portion of that building, and I believe that's about 118,000 square feet. As I stated earlier, both the petitioner and DHL are freight forwarding businesses or companies. In essence, they use high bay warehouse space to take in e-commerce goods. They store them there for a short period of time, and then they're trucked out to their scheduled destination. DHL is downsizing their facility at this location, and they're going to go down to 68,000 square feet. And the petitioner desires to occupy the space that they're vacating, which is about 49,000 square feet. Their proposal doesn't require any expansion to the building. The building currently has, I believe, 11 loading docks that service the building. The petitioner intends to construct 3 additional loading docks at the rear of the building, along with doing some interior office space. In addition, the majority of the vehicles that come to this establishment, the smaller box-style trucks versus the tractor-trailers, on average, they have a ratio of about 7 box trucks to every tractor-trailer. In essence, it's basically the same amount of square footage of the building is going to continue to be used as a freight forwarding business, even though we define it as a trucking terminal under our zoning ordinance. But the space is going to be occupied by 2 different companies rather than one. This building happens to be in an excellent location for this type of use due to its close proximity to all the major highways, especially Route 128, Route 1, and I-95. I do have with me this evening Mr. Fred McKay. He's the district manager, and together we'll try to answer any questions that either the council or the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Vonzalitis. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody here who would like to speak in favor? Anybody in favor? Seeing none. Anybody here who would like to speak in opposition? Anybody here in opposition? If you'd please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
It wouldn't be the same without you.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name's Russell Donovan, 12 Quail Road, South Peabody. It's easy to say yes, it's harder to say no. For those councilors, I'm sure you're aware of the traffic on Summit Street off of 128 and the interchange we're talking about in Centennial Drive. That property at 13 Centennial, if you add it as a trucking terminal, if they're coming off of 128, they're going to have to make a U-turn halfway up on Centennial Drive and come back to the building for loading or unloading there. So there's no turnaround down there. So they're going to have to go up towards the Marriott and turn around if they're coming off of 128. We already have very heavy traffic on that area. There has been a traffic study. How many trucks are going to come? There's a lot of questions to be answered and be asked by the City Council before you make an approval. Summit Street backs up every day. It's heavily traveled. I just have concerns about that. And before you say yes, please get the details of what expected traffic flow is. Because if they're not coming off of 128, they're coming down Linfield Street or Forest Street. Forest Street portions are a scenic road. I noticed the earlier agenda, AAA has a trucking terminal that's been recessed for a while. So there's a lot of truck traffic up there, and I know the city put up signs for truck travel routes off of Linfield Street and off of Centennial Drive. You're bringing more trucks into the area. We're heavily traveled now. Please ask the right questions before you vote. Thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to speak in opposition? Anyone else in opposition? Seeing none. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I met with Fred, the general manager, and Attorney Vonzalides 2 weeks ago, and looked at the site. This is, if anybody doesn't know, it's directly across the street from the PBD and Marriott is the location, and the 128 off-ramp is right there. I see it differently from Mr. Donovan. I appreciate his comments. I think this is the perfect location, as it has been for a better part of a decade with DHL, that these trucks will exit the facility and head out onto the highway. I think it's the least detrimental to any of our neighborhoods, and I believe I mentioned 2 weeks ago in our meeting that, you know, I realize the office park does affect wards 1, 2, 4, 5, almost all of us. So I was very concerned about that. And when I met with Fred, Fred informed me that they're occupying the same 49,000 square feet that DHL had previously occupied, the same type of business. They are adding 3 truck bays. My question to Fred and Attorney Vonzalides was the amount of trucks. I'll let you answer that more specifically, Ethan, in a second. But they are adding 3 truck bays. That does not mean tractor-trailer trucks. The vast majority of the trucks that enter this site are the small box trucks that you see, and I think that's where most shipping and receiving companies are going at this point. So I am in favor of it. I think I'm actually happy that with the reduction from DHL that we've very quickly filled the spot, as we've all talked about. You know, filling these vacant spots in the industrial or office park is very important. There are 2 conditions, Ethan. I don't know if you read those in the packet. That,
Yes, I did.
I will
We
add.
have no problems with those.
Okay, and the one specifically from the Conservation Commission, which reads, if the rear lot does not have a curb or asphalt berm, the applicant should use erosion controls during construction of truck terminals. And I realize it's only the bay doors, but you did mention that there would be some adjustment to the parking lot. So I would like the building inspector to get a copy of this and make sure that that's addressed.
That's fine.
Because of the conservation areas. The second condition was from the Health Department. If hazardous materials are to be stored for shipping, appropriate plans and notifications must be submitted to the Health Department. So you're okay with both of those?
Yes.
Thank you. Other than that, I think it's a pretty simple use, and I'll open it up to the council.
Councilors, we have any questions or comments? I don't see any. I would only say myself that I can attest to what Mr. Donovan is saying in terms of the traffic, but having an office there, the traffic is more cars than trucks. I don't see great numbers of trucks coming through there, but at 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, if you try to get out of there and take a left, it's nearly impossible because it backs all the way Summit Street, all the way back to the intersection. I don't think this use is going to exacerbate that at all. It's a matter of, I think at some point in time, we'll have to look at the traffic flow there and see if we can do something to either widen the intersections or create some slip ramps so that we can get out. But outside of that, I have no problems whatsoever. With that, Council Turco.
Mr. Chairman, move to close the public hearing.
On the motion, all in favor? Anyone opposed? It's a vote. Council Turco.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the application of Pilot Freight Services, 310 McClellan Highway, East Boston, Mass. for a special permit seeking to use a portion of the premises as a truck terminal at 13 Centennial Drive, Peabody, Mass. is filed in accordance with Section 4.2.6, 6.1.1, 6.1.4, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance, with the two conditions previously read from the Health Department, as well as the Conservation Commission, and also if the clerk could forward the Conservation Commission request to the building commissioner. So moved.
You've heard the motion by Councilor Turco. Any comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Sasslaw, Charis,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, one absent.
Thank you, and enjoy your break.
I'd like to move to item 4D on the agenda. The clerk will read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as a special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, July 11, 2019, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wiggins Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., on the application from Peter Pantazelos, trustee, Prospect Hill Realty Trust, care of 246 Andover Street, Peabody, Mass., for a special permit seeking approval for 18 residential dwelling units in a mixed-use building proposed for hotel, function room / facility, and residential dwelling uses. 5 studio efficiency type apartments and 13 one-bedroom apartment units are proposed. Waiver sought from restriction application of the zoning ordinance, specifically Section 6.16.3H District Regulations and Section 6.11 in inclusionary zoning at 41 Prospect Street, Unit 2, Peabody, Mass. Is filed in accordance with Sections 6.1, 6.16, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. Peabody City Council. Councilor John G. Durkle, City Council President.
Thank you. Could you please state your name and address for the record and tell us what you'd like to do?
Good evening. My name is Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street, Peabody, Massachusetts. I'm here with Peter Pantazelos, the project developer. Mr. Pantazelos has successfully developed mixed-use projects, including a residential component, most recently at Daniela's Restaurant with apartment dwellings in Danvers. He has also successfully developed the Polana building over on Sylvan Street and the Alto building at 41 Cross Street with offices. He has a reputation for producing high-quality construction development, and he's been very successful at what he's done. The application before you this evening is for a special permit pursuant to the provisions of Section 6.16 residential overlay of the City of Peabody zoning ordinance. The site contains, and you've seen this in your site plans provided with you in the packet, the blow-ups are behind me. But the site contains 2 existing buildings, one of which houses offices for a financial services firm and Alto Forno, uses allowed by right, and a new, almost completed structure, which is the subject of the application before you tonight. The second building, constructed and existing at the site, is proposed for a mix of residential and commercial uses, proposed for 18 apartment dwelling units pursuant to the residential overlay ordinance, 9 motel rooms, and a function facility, both of which uses are allowed by right. The building subject to the application otherwise substantially complies with the site and design criteria provisions of the residential overlay zoning ordinance and the zoning ordinance generally. The property is located between Prospect Streets and Cross Street in the Business Regional Zoning District, this being Prospect Street and this being Cross Street. The property is located in a neighborhood with many existing structures and populated with a mix of commercial and residential uses. For example, 300 Avalon residential apartment units, not far, the North Shore Mall, offices at 39 Cross Street, a jewelry store, veterinary clinic, medical offices, etc. The existing two-story building on the property, which is not the subject of the instant application, is occupied and has been used as mentioned since 2017. The building subject to this application has been built and is a 6-story building which is awaiting final completion. And that building is located in the pretty much middle of the site, right there. Most site improvements and design elements have been constructed and installed. All existing proposed uses on the property comply with the off-street parking requirements of the zoning ordinance, namely, the project with the restaurant, offices, 9 motel rooms, and 18 apartment units requires under the ordinance 73 parking spaces where 75 are provided, along with the lease of an additional 30 spaces at 39 Cross Street, owned by Daniel Messina, trustee of the 39 Cross Street, 79 Cross Street Realty Trust. And that property is located directly adjacent and behind us, right here. Note also, Mr. Messina submitted correspondence to the city clerk this morning stating that he has no objections to the application before you. I have copies of that letter if you wish to accept it or take my word for it.
Make a motion to accept?
The clerk hasn't received it, so we'll just...
He hasn't. It was addressed to him. I'm not sure if he was leaving it up to us or if he...
Do you have a copy you're handing out to everyone?
I do.
Motion to receive?
All in favor, any opposed, it's a vote.
The subject building meets all frontage, lot coverage, front setback and side setback and rear setback requirements of the zoning ordinance, and no relief is required in that regard. Most of the site and design improvements, landscaping and lighting have been constructed and installed, and the project has been through the city's development impact and site plan review process twice with the construction of each building at the site. The project is currently and substantially in line with the framework of common principles and guidelines established in the site and design criteria set forth in section 6.14.4 of the Residential Overlay District Ordinance. Namely, city departments and the planning board have reviewed the architectural character and energy considerations for the project and buildings at the property, including analysis of site layout, landscaping, lighting, traffic through the site, with review of other design features and characteristics. And of course, with this added use, we are willing to resubmit to refresh those review before the planning board and the city's development committee. No new curb cuts are proposed, and those existing have to date appropriately handled traffic flow throughout the site as used. So if you look at the site, there are 3 means of ingress and egress to and from the site. There's the Cross Street ingress here, and then there's Prospect Street, ingress and egress here, and here. And the buildings are so positioned on the site where we have noticed that people are not using this as a cut through. They are pretty much respecting the drives as they are and using the site for their intended uses to date. Site layout and parking areas are constructed and will be completed in accordance with the letter and spirit of the requirements of Section 6.16.4.5 site and design criteria of the residential ordinance. A landscaping buffer exists around the entire perimeter side yards of the property around the subject building. So that landscaping buffer exists from Cross Street all the way down by 39 Cross Street, the adjacent building, wrapping around down Prospect Street, and then the remainder of the site down behind this residential structure and this residential structure. So there are landscaping elements, and I provided you with the landscaping plan. Much of that has been completed, but there's some work left to be done. And of course, there are some tweaks required pursuant to the residential overlay requirements, and we certainly have the ability to make those tweaks and adjustments. Screening of the parking area with an existing 10-foot retaining wall at the Prospect Street side of the property gradually slopes to 2 feet below grade and exists in the area where a combination of trees and plantings are proposed for additional screening in accordance with the landscaping plan. So that area is over here. Right now, there's a 10-foot retaining wall that starts here and gradually follows the grade of the property to about 2 feet below grade here. And there's about 20 feet here that allows us to put more screening and vegetation right close to the street. A bike rack will be provided toward the rear of the building, right here. Park benches and a table and a pergola are proposed within the buffer area to the north and rear of the property at Prospect, adjacent to 39 Cross Street, adding open space amenities per the residential overlay site and design requirements. And that those amenities are proposed in this area here. Trash loading and service areas are located within the property and are generally not viewable from Cross Street or Prospect Street. The dumpster serving the property is screened and fenced in and is located to the far northeast corner of the property, away from any existing residences and public rights of way. So that dumpster is currently located right here. Utilities are brought into the property and are located entirely underground. All stormwater runoff, and you were provided with the utility plan, are treated on site. The existing and proposed uses subject to the application support and are substantially consistent with the residential overlay zoning ordinance purposes. That is to encourage the desired mix of uses of business, commercial, office, and entertainment uses for workers, visitors, residents with the restaurant, offices, proposed motel rooms, apartment, and function facility. The buildings on the property are a combination of heights consistent with the buildings located within and adjacent to the property within the neighborhood, and are architecturally and aesthetically consistent with other buildings, both within and around the property, maintaining the visual character and scale of the existing development in the neighborhood. The project will produce additional units of affordable housing to be added to the city's subsidized housing inventory. The mix of uses proposed within the buildings located there are a high quality and upscale design with modern and tasteful characteristics. As I mentioned, no additional curb cuts are proposed beyond those existing, and as depicted on the plan submitted, allowing for safe traffic circulation within and into and out of the site. These mix of uses provide for a compact and efficient use of land and employ technologies which protect and encourage conservation of water resources by the reduction and use of the property as a by-right hotel, which it was entirely proposed for at one point, and is an intense use with high water and utility consumption. The proposed apartment uses and the property's close location to the shopping mall and other commercial centers, including professional and medical offices, retail stores, and restaurants, provide for a critical housing need near these employment, commercial, and entertainment centers. The applicant will incorporate within the property, as part of the proposed plan, open site amenities, as I mentioned, such as benches, tables, the pergola, the bike rack, and consistent with the site development guidelines and the residential overlay. There is more than adequate parking. As I mentioned, 73 spaces are required, 75 spaces are provided, with an additional 30 spaces at 39 Cross Street being leased. And the applicant is also willing to work with adjacent property owners, particularly the mall, to encourage safe pedestrian access to the mall. The subject building is situated at the lowest point on the property within the constraints of the required setbacks and parking, and this mitigates any impacts on adjacent buildings. I'll add that we comply with the zoning setbacks as they are written in the ordinance, which are much stricter than those provided in the residential overlay. The subject building is also situated in a north-south direction and is jogged relative to and away from adjacent buildings, and in such a way to mitigate or eliminate negative impacts on neighboring buildings, particularly that at 39 Cross Street. We were very concerned about that at construction. The project preserves and makes efficient use of open space and stormwater, as I indicated, is treated on site. With that, the proposed project, I believe, will help meet a critical housing need in the city and will add to the city's affordable housing stock, all in harmony with a mix of uses at the surrounding neighborhood and consistent with the spirit and intent of the residential overlay. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience here to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody in the audience here to speak in favor? Anybody in the audience here to speak in opposition? Anybody here to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Councilor Charis.
Thank you, President. I've been at this site. I've looked at this property. It is beautiful, and as you stated earlier, certainly to the reputation of the petitioner and all his development. As council had indicated throughout your testimony, I don't think there's many questions that you haven't brought to us that with the answers, without the answers. Again, I will support this because this does, as we talked about earlier, address the housing shortage that we have with affordable and non-affordable and regular affordable, regular housing, I guess. Again, this use is permitted as a hotel that was early on, and bringing a residential opponent to this just adds to the need that we have in the city. I think this is a prime example that we want to look at for the overlay. It's a small project. If we want to see if this overlay is going to work, I think this is a perfect example for us to see that is not too large, that is smaller. The developer has a reputation that we all know to be good. We want good developers here in the city to reach our potential. So with that, there is a couple of conditions that I would like to add, but I would like to open it up to the council.
Council, could you receive item 8K?
Move to receive 8K, please. So move.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief, but I'll speak to Mr. Pantazelis and his team's character. I've known Mr. Pantazelis for over 25 years, and everything that he has done, and Mr. Panos listed his projects, and I'm sure there's many more that we aren't even aware of. But his integrity and his character are second to none. He is very philanthropic and has done everything right, tried to do everything right to make the town of Peabody, the city of Peabody, a better place to live. And I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Rossignol.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a couple of questions and then a couple of comments. You had mentioned earlier about 75 parking spaces. Does any of those parking spaces are existing on the restaurant portion of the lot?
Yes, so given the compact nature of the site,
Yep.
the parking spaces are not designated for specific uses. However, one of the reasons why we entered into with Mr. Messina the lease of the 30 adjacent spaces is so that we could alleviate some of the pressure on the site. Restaurant parking and function room facility parking will be valet only. We will make use of Mr. Messina's 30 parking spaces, and to the extent necessary, we'll be using on-site parking as well.
And that valet will be off-site?
The valet will be on-site, right in front of the restaurant as it's currently operating.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Another question I have is regarding the two curb cuts on Cross Street. Was there any thought making a one-way in and one-way out? Is that cross? I'm sorry, on Prospect Street. I'm sorry, on Prospect Street. Making one of those curb cuts being an entrance only and one being an exit only. In my opinion, I think that would do two things. One, I know you had mentioned prior the fear of cut-through. I think that would minimize some of that because you're not really going to be sure how to go in if everything is in one loop. And I just think it will lessen the traffic impact on Prospect if it was a one-way in and a one-way out in both of those curb cuts.
Actually, that's the way we originally had it. And remarkably, the effect has been the opposite. We noticed that, not for cut-through, really we haven't noticed any cut-through activity through the site because you really need to do a lot to get through that property. You're there to park and enjoy the amenities that exist there. Given that Prospect Street is a left-hand only turn, we really haven't seen a lot of congestion as a result of the two-way. It was just somewhat inconvenient to keep it one way as it was. And so we gave this a try and it's been working out.
Has the police department weighed in on their interpretation of what this is going to look like as a two-way on both entrances?
I believe through the construction review process, which this project's been through twice, they certainly had an opportunity to weigh in. I'm not sure if they have. But we'll be refreshing that construction review process in contemplation of the new uses, so we'll certainly make sure that issue is addressed.
Lastly, and then I'll yield to my counterparts. One of the recommendations from the Community Development and Planning Department was clarification regarding the lighting on the roof and making sure that that is mitigating light pollution. I just want to make sure that there's no extensive lighting being emitted off of the building that's going to intrude on any neighbors?
All lighting on the roof, well, first of all, on the roof, we're talking about, on the roof deck itself, an area of about 480 square feet. So it's a relatively small area. And any proposed lighting will be low lighting from below. And the proposal is to screen that whole outdoor area with arborvitae. So that will both diminish any impacts of light pollution coming off the site and also noise pollution coming from that small roof deck.
Thank you. I'll yield.
Thank you. Very quickly before I go to Council Melville, for housekeeping so it doesn't get lost, you are waiving, I should say, or removing your request to waive the application of the inclusionary zoning?
That's absolutely right.
Okay, I just wanted that for the record. Council Melville.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I had an opportunity to just drive up to the property and on my way to work one morning to just check it out. I would agree that the cut-through is not something I can see. It's not a natural cut-through. It's not as if you know that you can get through, and it's not really much of a cut-through because if you keep going, you'll get on there probably faster. But I did have a couple questions. So part of the overlay district under 6.1, 6.3B, it's multiple buildings and uses on a single lot is allowed and may be incorporated as part of an overall site design and layout. What is the restaurant's? Is the restaurant going to be part of this overall business operation at the hotel, or like for example, like room service from the restaurant, or are these just basically two separate operations on the same parcel?
It's two separate operations on the same parcel. However, with that said, we do have that function facility, and we will be providing room service for the 9 motel rooms, which will come from any one of the 3 restaurants, particularly for the functions up top. Catering will come from either Alto, Polana, or for food service only.
Okay, so this is food service for the actual function facility.
That's correct.
Okay.
But separate entities, separate operations.
Yeah. And you had actually, through Councilor, I believe, Rossignol addressed the valet parking side of this. Now, and just curious, if you were asking only for the 18 apartments, essentially because you can't ask for the entire building to be apartments, correct? You're doing this based on what the overlay district is, the requirements of the overlay district, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm really marveled at this project, both the application, its multiple uses, and its history. You had said that this was a hotel by right. Did you say that earlier?
That's correct. Under the zoning ordinance, it is a by right use as a hotel motel.
Okay, because I'm just a little confused with this building. And to be honest with you, when it went up, it just kind of appeared, and I got a lot of calls saying, how did that 6-story building get there? And my answer was, I don't have any idea. It didn't come before us. So therefore, process of elimination, it probably went through the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is correct?
That's correct.
Right. So, and in your packet, I don't know if it was provided by you or by the city clerk, but it was very helpful. The 2 or 3 times that this project went through the Board of Appeals is in here. So I'm just confused how it's a hotel by right when the first time it went to the ZBA, and you were the chair of the ZBA at the time, it was, I thought it said it was a by right for a office building, and it could be 4 stories. But instead, they came forward, I could have it wrong. Instead, they came forward for a 3-story building because it was less intrusive use of the area. So the ZBA, again, which you would chair, approved it. So it was originally approved at to change the use, and it was a 3-story building. But in the paperwork, it didn't say anything about a hotel, so I didn't know that it was approved as a 3-story hotel.
Initially, the project came before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the initial use was slated for the subject building was an office building. And when Mr. Pantazellos took over the project and subsequently bought it and tried to solicit tenants, he had a difficult time doing that. I can't answer why the application originally came before the Zoning Board of Appeals as a 3-story building. I don't really remember why, but it was, and 4 stories is allowed by right. Fast forward, Mr. Pantazellos came in, tried to maintain the consistency of the intended uses, that is for retail stores. He wasn't even going to build the new building, the smaller building where Alto Forno is. He was going to make use of an existing building on the site, decided none of that was feasible, did a total tear down, maintained all of the site setbacks that were allowed by that variance way back when in 2014. And it's gone through several iterations. The retail use that was originally proposed by the previous owners, the offices just weren't feasible for the marketplace at the time. And then the next logical iteration was the by right hotel. There was no residential component allowed until the council, passed the residential overlay. So Mr. Pantazellos thought, okay, hotel might be the next best thing, but not sure. If we can get the residential ultimately, that might be nice too. But ultimately, retail stores and offices became a restaurant and an office. And then in that second building where offices were intended, a hotel, and now we're before you to make it a mix of uses, hotel, function room.
Okay, so then we have a 3-story building that was allowed a variance because it was less intrusive. And then it went back to the ZBA. A few years later, you were no longer the chair, you were the developer's attorney. And got another variance for another 2 floors. So I think it went from 40 feet to 60 feet.
There were 2 variances, one of which I wasn't involved in, but it went from 40 feet to 50 feet to 60 feet.
Okay, and then there was another one for 9 feet for the elevator something on top that needed another 9 feet, which is another floor. So is it like 70 feet high?
No, that was included in the second variance. That second variance was to bump up and accommodate for the elevator.
Okay, so it's been before the ZBA and got a lot of approved
3 times.
variances. 3 times, and a couple times were financial hardship. Okay, and the fact that it's a different owner in the interim there at some point clears a couple things up for me, so that makes sense. And the reason I'm pointing this out is, we have this inclusionary zoning issue of 20, whether it goes to 20 in the residential overlay, if it goes to 25% or 20%. My issue, and this is a great example, is my issue is when we reduce the height of the building from 5 stories to 4 stories, developers' attorneys can come forward, go to the ZBA, and get variances to get another 2 to 3 floors. That can happen, and it does happen, and this is a perfect example. So my point being, when we go to 25% to 20%, yet they get to put on 3 additional floors because this is a prime example that it can happen and it does happen, then we miss out on the extra 5% of, what would that be, another maybe 5 or 6 units, my point. So my point is made there. So you've got quite a smorgasbord of activity in this building. And you have apartments and you have hotels. So you have 18 apartments and then 3 hotels? Because you said 9.
9 motel
so
rooms.
So it's 27 units? Did I do my math right?
Well, 18 apartment units, 9 motel rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, a unit is a defined term under your zoning ordinance
Yeah.
as a residential dwelling unit.
So is
So
it
9
20?
motel rooms and the function facility.
Oh, okay. And so it's a hotel. Do you pay a hotel tax? Because it's a hotel by right, as you say, and it's got hotel rooms. Will you be paying a hotel tax?
I assume we will be, yes, for at least the occupancy of those 9 rooms.
Okay. And then a hotel tax, you wouldn't get a restaurant and a hotel tax, right? You would get a hotel tax. Anyone? I believe it's just a hotel. You don't get both because hotels have restaurants. So, okay.
And speaking to taxes, I mean, part of the building will be assessed for commercial purposes and part for residential purposes.
Okay. And you have a liquor license that goes with the food and with the function room and things like that. Okay. So that really clears it up because I never knew how that building got there, how it was so tall, and it's been about 4 or 5 years since it went up. So you certainly do have a smorgasbord of activity going on there, and I understand it's a new owner, and we have the residential overlay that allows for these things. I am just a little intrigued at the mash of a hotel and apartments.
If I may, we would do it all as apartments.
Right, but it
if we
doesn't fit
could.
the, right.
But we can't.
I wish we had, see, this is a time where I would wish that we had our own city council attorney, because that would be a question that I would ask, is just because I don't know the answer, not because I'm suspect, that we're combining hotel use and restaurant use in the overlay. It's just very peculiar, but we don't have anybody here from community development or an attorney for me to bounce that off of, and that's unfortunate, because that's odd to me, and I'm just wondering if we're setting, it sounds like it's great, and I have faith in this owner to do the right thing, but I'm just wondering if we're setting precedent in other buildings that we can allow all that type of activity, because it really clearly, it's not clear to me that we can, but it's not clear to me that we can't either. But thank you.
And to that, the way I look at it is, you know, the whole residential overlay district ordinance is designed to encourage that combination of commercial and residential dwelling uses. And the hotel motel being for profit for a fee, and the facility, the function facility on the top floor, those are commercial uses.
And I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't argue that, and I don't argue the concept. My concern is precedent and future instances where people may point to your project and say, well, it's in this residential overlay. It's 6 stories high. It has a hotel. It has a liquor license. It has apartments. It has a function room. It's got everything. Why can't we? And that's my concern.
Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, so I think as a few councilors have alluded to, I mean, because this is early in the process and this building was already under construction, this is, you know, and the overlay is new, but there's, we're playing a little catch-up, I guess, with this one. Attorney Panos referred to the site and design criteria and how he believes the building is in compliance, and you know, I don't necessarily doubt what he's saying, but that's not his call. That's supposed to come to us as a function of the construction review and the site plan review, that the way the ordinance was written, you know, that's really supposed to, we're supposed to have something that tells us that, or their recommendations. And there's also another output of that that's supposed to come as part of the, as part of that process, is a potential capital facility assessment. and then we make a determination as to the applicability of that assessment for certain things, so that the developer would pay that rather than the taxpayers. And those are issues related to demand on electrical, water and sewer, drainage capacities, and so forth. So I heard Attorney Panos a couple of times use the term refresh, and when as it relates to site plan review and construction review committee. And I see you nodding to the affirmative right now. And so it's your understanding that if we now do this as a condition of the permit, or if we were to do it as a condition of the permit, the applicant would willingly accept that and submit to that process, so that we can be certain that that the project is scrutinized against the actual overlay zoning language, and not the underlying zoning language that it originally went through the process. With respect to that language, it couldn't possibly have gone through with respect to the new language, because it didn't exist at that point in time. So again, we're playing catch up. So in terms of it going through that evaluation, to make sure that the site and design criteria do meet the ordinance of the overlay ordinance, as well as that there's a thorough assessment of the potential capital facility assessment. I just want to know that you, on behalf of the applicant, are willing to submit to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Mr. President, through you to Councilor Charis, is you're willing to make that condition as part of what you plan to do this evening?
That is exactly what I spoke earlier, certain conditions that I'm going to be adding to it. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other councilors? Councilor Gravel.
I just wanted to comment on the building. It's we got a nice technical overview, but really every once in a while I think somebody should just say it's a really cool looking building that's got a lot of character, and I think you did a heck of a job, particularly given the scale of the site. I mean, it's I don't find the size of that building to be offensive at all. I think it blends nicely with everything else that's there. It sits in the back nicely. And as far as odd duck uses, I think sometimes in this economy you have to think a little bit out of the box, and I think you've done that. I didn't understand why you'd be keeping the liquor license that you got, but I get it now. You're going to have a function facility there, and probably will attract, for those hotel rooms, maybe some long-term stay people who are business related, and they might have weeks at a time where they got to be somewhere. And it's a heck of a lot nicer being, when you're 2 weeks somewhere, being in a place that looks like a residence than a hotel room. So it's kind of an interesting mix. I congratulate you for thinking of it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I plan to support it. I think it's a great idea, and I hope it spawns others to think that way. Thanks.
Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you. I was just curious regarding the 18 units, the 5 studios and the 13 one-bedrooms. What do you see as the market rates for rents on that? Any idea what you'll be going to market with?
We haven't undertaken the assessment yet, but we're waiting to be so fortunate as to get a positive vote from the City Council, and at that point, we'll be hiring our lottery agent for the affordable units, and that will help us also set the market rate for the units, because they undertake an entire market analysis to tell us what the affordables ought to be renting at compared to what the market rate should be renting at. So we're undertaking that assessment, They're unique hotel rooms, apartment rooms, one-bedroom efficiency, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but we really haven't undertaken that analysis in detail yet, so it's hard to say. I don't want to commit to anything and then be accused of misleading anyone.
Understood. As Councilor Charest stated earlier, I think it's an interesting concept. It's a unique project. I think to see what you finally do set those rates at will be interesting, and I'm sure you'll do your due diligence. I am familiar with the petitioner's previous works and his reputation, and I'm glad to see that he is continuing to do business in Peabody, and I will support this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and to that point too, we'll be working very closely with Stacy Burns and Kurt Bellavance's department, particularly with regard to the lottery and setting those affordable rates, so that all of that will be public knowledge at the appropriate time.
I just, one statement that I wanted to make, that I actually did tour the building a little over a week ago. It's an absolutely beautiful building, not entirely complete, but almost, and I shared the same questions that Councilor Manning had, and I believe I spoke to you about this, Jason, was the 18 units in the 9 hotel rooms. Although it is an interesting idea, like Councilor Gravel said, I would just have concerns about mixing those two. But you did mention to me, or maybe it was Mr. Pantazelos that mentioned, that the 9 hotel rooms could easily be converted into 3 additional apartments, but the zoning doesn't call for it. Do you see, first of all, would you, if you were able, would you apply for a variance to make those 21 apartments rather than 18 and 9, or do you prefer to keep it as is listed in the permit? And with that same question, do you see an opportunity that you would be able to go to the ZBA for a variance because we created the zoning after the building was built? So I guess that would technically be the hardship. But anyway, my question is, what's the preference of the owner? Is it the 18 and 9, or is it 21 apartments?
The preference would be the 21 apartments, if we could do it, and it were considered a dimensional requirement, subject to the waiver provisions of the residential overlay with the public purpose. Obviously, we would keep that function facility. You know, we'd entertain that, but I think given the circumstances as they are, we're fully willing to go forward with the 18 and the 9.
Thank you.
But our preference would be to have one entire apartment building.
Thank you, and I will most definitely support this as it is, but I do favor the 21 apartments also, just if my opinion matters. With that, Councilor...
We may be back then.
With that, Councilor Charest.
Thank you. I would like to move to close the public hearing.
All in favor, any opposed? Let's vote.
I would like to move in favor of the petitioner with some conditions. One on your packet dated on July 11th, 2019. The comment is the applicant shall provide an estimate of additional water and sewage demands on the expectation on the developer, and it's expected to remove 200% of the flow. This shall be accomplished through the infiltration inflow I&I project assigned by the city, and is to be completed prior to the applicants receiving a full occupancy permit. The applicant shall also be responsible for installing the necessary water infiltration for the support of proposed development, domestic and fire protection needed. And it just says, please see the attached correspondence. That is the one condition that I know you already have, but I want to make sure we highlight that. The other, along with Councilor McGinn was pointing out, In accordance with Section 12 of the City Peabody zoning ordinance, the applicant shall meet with all construction review committee and then subsequently complete a site plan review process. In addition to the requirement of Section 12, such activities with the construction review committee, the supplementary planning board shall consider all site and design critical to identifying Section 6.16.4 and 2 of all points raised in the communication related to this matter of the Community Development Planning Department. And I'll go on. All documents, recommendations from the Construction Planning Review Board shall be considered binding in condition of the special permit. Further, in the audience, accordance with the Section 6.13.3L, Section 6.16, 4.9 of the City Peabody zoning ordinance. A capital facility assessment will be required and will be determined by the Construction Review Committee and the Planning Board that the applicant should be contributing to a capital improvement. The applicant shall make such contributions in the amount and the manner prescribed by the Section 6.16.4.9, an additional obligation to contribute to capital improvement and shall be considered binding conditions of this special permit. I would like to include those. So move. With that being said, I'd like to move to approve the application.
On the motion.
Unless I miss anything else, councilors.
Council McGinn.
On the motion, Mr. President, and for the record, I think you made this clarification probably for this purpose, but I think in the reading of the notice, it did not exclude the waiver request on the inclusionary zoning percentage. So I think I just want to make sure that Councilor Charis' motion is clear that it does not include that portion of what was published in the notice of public hearing.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council McGinn. On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rossignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, 1 absent.
Thank you, councilors. Have a great break.
Councilors, if we could return to our seats, I want to move to item 4E on the agenda. Mr. Grillo, if you don't mind, you can take that out into the hallway there. Thank you. Councilors, we're going to move to item 4E. The clerk will read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as a special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, July 11, 2019, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wiggins Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., on the application from Cy Tenney Residences, LLC, 194 Newbury Street, Peabody, Mass., for a special permit seeking to construct 64 residential units and further seek a waiver of the height requirement to allow for 54 feet at 190 rear Newbury Street, Assessors Map 35, Parcel 38A, Peabody, Mass., as filed in accordance with Section 6.1, 6.16, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. Peabody City Council, Councilor John G. Turco, City Council President.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is John Kelty. I'm an attorney. I have offices at 40 Lowell Street, Peabody, Massachusetts, and I appear this evening on behalf of Cy Tenney Residence LLC, whose managing member is Arthur Pimental, who is here this evening in attendance with me this evening. By way of clarification, at the outset, I would like to state that we will not be asking for any waiver with respect to height. We will construct a 4-story over parking building, open parking below. It'll be 4 stories. So if you're looking at the renderings at all, those units that are at the top of the rendering will not be there. There will be no community room on the roof, and there will be no office space on the roof, nor will there be any residential units on the roof. So we will comply with the requirements of the residential overlay height requirement. That will lower the number of units to 60 units. My application had said that we were going to ask for 54 feet in height. That would have given us 64 units. We'll be at 60 units. And we were also not asking for any waiver of any provision under the inclusionary zoning. So whatever that percentage ends up, whether it be 25 or lowered to 20, then that's what we'll abide by, and we'll provide that number of affordable units. We now are dealing with 60 units at 1.5 parking spaces per unit. We have a requirement for 90 spaces. Our site plan development shows 104 spaces on the facility. We have those available. This matter has been before the Conservation Commission actually many years ago as one proposal, and then most recently there is an order of condition that has been granted and is another year left. I've presented the order of conditions to the Conservation Commission for a 1-year extension, which would take us to 2021 under that order. The building that I have submitted to you as part of the packet this evening is the building that has indeed been approved by the Conservation Commission. We will have 52 2-bedroom units, and there will be 8 1-bedroom units. We provide more than sufficient parking. We are proposing that our trash location will be in a dumpster within the first floor garage area, and each floor will have trash chutes, and that the unit that will be on the ground floor within the parking area, that unit will be actually a compactor, so people can put their trash in on a daily basis, and it'll reach the ground floor and be picked up from there. I think that with respect to, we have seen we have been vetted, if you will, by Meridian Associates in a separate review to determine whether we impact the Conservancy District, or in the alternative, whether we impact them or whether we are impacted by it. The Meridian review has suggested that we are not impacted by it whatsoever, and we are allowed to build in this area, as was also agreed to by the Conservation Commission. We would, from here, if we are fortunate enough to be granted this special permit this evening, we will be subjected to site plan review. I know that the Department of Public Services has said that they would reserve certain utility reviews until the until the Construction Review Committee meetings and the Planning Board construction review. And I'm also aware of the need to address this capital facilities formula, and it is my understanding that that formula is going to be fleshed out in the very immediate future so as to provide the Construction Review Committee with a formula that would suggest to us what our contribution must need be. We would be happy to agree to a condition that suggests that we appear before the Construction Review Committee and Planning Board. This project has not been down that road in the past. This no construction has begun on this particular project, and I'm happy to answer questions that the board may have this evening. We do fit into the Category B. We are a 3.78 acre parcel of land, so as such we get the additional height and we get the additional density, which we have not exceeded. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience here to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody in the audience here to speak in favor of this petition? Come right to the podium, ma'am. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Audrey Gordon. I live at 17 Pine Street.
And I'm Rich Reed, and I live at 17 Pine Street.
So we have been before you previously. Our position still remains the same. We are direct abutters to this property. It's right in our backyard. And we are in favor of this because as of right, they can build a hotel. We would much prefer to have residences. 1 and 2 bedroom residences is even better, more preferable to a hotel for obvious reasons. We've been working with the developer for quite some time to mitigate any impact that it has as much as we possibly can. We are going to have some say in landscaping, lighting, those kinds of things. So we appreciate that involvement in the process, and we do think that they've been very open and honest and wanting to work with us to try to make it as least impactful as it possibly can for where we are. So we definitely would be in favor of this special permit being allowed.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience here to speak in favor? Anybody in the audience here to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anybody here to speak in opposition? Mr. Donovan, come right to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record.
The name is Russell Donovan, 12 Quail Road. This property has a long history. Back in 2006, the city council changed the zoning down there from, it used to be the Wetland Conservancy District, and the city council in its wisdom changed the elevation to allow the latitudes to be built and this property be outside of the Wetland Conservancy District. As Jack mentioned in his presentation, that district was reviewed, but I'd like to point out to the city council that besides another overlay district exists down there, and since we just created an enterprise business, the water and sewer, this overlay district is a surface groundwater protection district for our drinking water. And I know in looking at the zoning ordinance, the latest one, it does list zones 1, 2, and 3, and I'm no expert, but I don't know. I think the city experts, the new water department, should look at this area because Pine Street wells and Johnson Street wells, which were shut down in 1989, because of contamination. The city is looking, my understanding, the city is looking to reuse those wells, and this is part of that protection district. And under the zoning that we have here, what is not allowed is resident development is not allowed under Zone 1. Now, the attorney did not mention the groundwater surface water protection district. I don't know if it's been reviewed by their experts. I don't know if the city has their experts to review this. But I think we should look at that for our protection of our drinking water supply. And it should be addressed here at the City Council. It should be addressed at the Planning Board. The Conservation Commission never brought it up. It seems to be overlooked. So before you approve, I would like some expert from the city and from the developer to say yes or no about this surface and groundwater protection district. It's an overlay district that covers that area, and I have not heard one word from anybody on the board or of city board or the developers about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Is there anybody else in the audience to speak in opposition to this petition? Anybody else to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Council Sasslaw.
Thank you, Council President. So just want to kind of going to run through a list here of a few questions, and then I'm going to open it up to my fellow councilors. In the special permit application, I noticed throughout it uses the term residential units. It's my understanding that nowhere do I see the word condominium. It's my understanding in all discussions with developer, these are going to be condominiums, not apartments, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So just want to have that on the record. Thank you. I'm just going to thumb through the application just to get some confirmation. We see a note from the collector's office about a unpaid small tax balance of about $1,450. The applicant understands this must be paid in full and must be up to date on the taxes before they can start any work, which I know there's still a couple of site plan reviews and other meetings they need to go through, but just to be clear, taxes must be paid in full. Agreed?
Yes, I do.
Also, there is a comment from the Conservation Commission regarding all work must be done per the order of conditions, DEP, file number 55-810, and that's attached. I understand that's the, that needs to be followed, correct? Okay?
Yes.
So I'd like to just state once again for the record, we're talking about a four-story building, 60 condominiums. I did have a question regarding, so the plan that's before us, I understand the top floor is gone. Is every other floor in the floor plans that were submitted exactly the way they're going to be laid out? You know, I'm going to refer us, there's a document, Side Tenny Suites, and it has a list of drawings by floor. And if I go to page number, it was page number 3, and it says second floor plan. Is that, and you see on the bottom left, it says 2E, 2B, 2C, 2B, 1A. Is this the layout that will be built?
Yes, it will be.
Okay. And because I didn't see any, I did not see any number of units per floor, and because there were so many different numbers on as far as 2B, 2C, 2E, can we clarify how many units per floor? I don't want to assume anything. I know we said 60 total, but how many on each floor, if you would?
It'll be 15 units per floor.
It'll be 15 units per floor. Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Arthur Pimentel. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Pimentel. I'd like to move now to the address some of the issues that were brought up by the motion to receive item 8L on suspension of rules.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote.
And this was the memorandum from the Department of Community Development. And some of the items you did address, Council, but there were a few that I just do want to vet and discuss publicly. Obviously, this will be conditionally approved, this application, upon site plan approval by the planning board. And as was previously discussed in the previous project, you acknowledge that the capital applicability assessment will need to be done, and you've agreed to that. But if we start on the first page, it talks about site must be developed in accordance with the site design criteria listed in the zoning ordinance. This design criteria includes addition of appropriate placed bicycle infrastructure, bike storage, parking, etc., outdoor space of some kind, benches or small garden on site, and the use of the acceptable materials for the building. Any objection to that at all? Thank you. I will be including that. I'm going to go down to page number 2. It just talks about, second bullet point, regarding materials. It does not allow for vinyl siding. It doesn't state that you're using vinyl siding, but just once again to advise the petitioner, you need to confirm that the overall proposed materials are in line with the design criteria and blend appropriately with the proposed building.
Is that a question?
I just want acknowledgement that you've
We
read
would
that.
agree to that,
Okay.
yes. We understand that, too.
Okay, thank you. Moving further down, there was an interesting comment about the underground parking area and regarding maybe one, if you're going to have 2 openings, one would be for the cars to come in and one for the cars to leave. Your thoughts on that? Did you look at that? It's not a requirement, but I certainly think it's a fair suggestion in the interest of safety. I'm just curious if you've thought about that at all.
So are you saying one way in, one way out?
I'm not saying it. It's the recommendation.
We can look at that issue, and Arthur's feeling is that we could probably agree to that.
Okay. I think it's just more of a safety issue,
Yep.
probably better for even your tenants. I think it's a reasonable one. So you look at that, that's fine. Next bulleted point, regarding a crosswalk. Crosswalk be added on the property connecting the sidewalk to the front of the building, specifically in front of the entrance exit to the under-building area, as one is not currently shown on the plan. I think that's, once again, a safety issue. Do you agree to that? Thank you. Also, in discussions, you folks are aware that you are near the bike path, and I believe there's a bulleted point on that. Let's see. It just discusses, actually, at the bottom of page 2, the applicant must work with the city on providing a safe and appropriate access to the path in the future. You'll agree to that?
Yes.
Thank you. You've discussed the trash situation, so I'm comfortable, actually. I like it, and I think it's a very convenient and nice amenity for your potential tenants, or owners, excuse me. You've also addressed the parking situation and numbers. Just for the record, we did have a neighborhood meeting approximately 4 or 5 weeks ago at the West PBD Library. We had the developer showed up, Kurt Bellavance was there, and a number of councils were in the room. As I stated earlier, the concern was the height. I'm happy to see that we're not looking for any height variance or anything of that nature. As there's no one here tonight speaking in opposition, I'd like to think that we've tried to do our due diligence as best possible. I will be supporting it with the conditions outlined, and I will be also adding the previous condition on the previous project. And lastly, for the record, one of the concerns of some of the residents on Pine Street is Pine Street becoming a cut-through. We're going to have increased traffic. Some people will choose to go down Pine Street rather than going up Route 1 for for traffic issues, which is there. I am working with the neighbor to try and figure out the best way to do that. Broad Street, which is one street over, is a conditional one-way, depending on the times of the day. So it's not a simple solution, but I have reached out to Captain Richards to discuss that, possibly making it a one-way, things of that nature. There were some good ideas brought up by the neighbors. I've taken an advisement, and they know I'm working on that. But the one thing that I did, the developer did agree to as a condition is that they will be making a $5,000 donation to the Peabody Police Department to be used exclusively for a permanent meter reader board that will be utilized on Pine Street. And I think that while it's not a perfect resolution, it's a start, and I think the residents appreciate that, and I appreciate the developer agreeing to that, as it should help continue to slow down the traffic as best as possible. At this point, I'm going to open up to my fellow councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Charest.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor, if you would want to check to make sure the meter reader is actually not more than 5,000, if you would make that part of the condition, because I think last time we had it in the budget, it was a little bit more, so if they want to pay for the total cost, that would be even better, but I'll leave that up to you.
Already did. Been working with Sergeant Harkins. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarification, you said this is condos, not apartments?
I did.
Owner-occupied condos?
Yes.
Is that what it's going to be? Is there a stipulation that they won't be renting, or is that just going to be up to,
we haven't gotten that far yet.
association? Okay. Thank you. That was all I have.
Any other questions? Okay, Councilman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Attorney Kelty. You noted that it didn't matter to you whether it was 20% or 25% inclusionary zoning in the new overlay. So you said, you know, whatever it is, it is. You weren't afraid. You weren't afraid of 25%. It didn't scare you away from submitting the application. It didn't scare your developer away because of his bottom line.
I will say this, because the first time around, my application was asking for that to be reduced, so there was some trepidation.
So if I could ask, so you were asking for 64, so now it's 60. And this is I'm asking these questions because I want to learn. So there are 60 units, and at 25%, that would be 15 affordable units, and at 20%, it'd be 12 affordable units. So it's just 3 affordable units. How much does that really affect your bottom line?
Without the extra floor, the expectation is that condos would be going out in somewhere 5 and change, and the affordables end up being in the vicinity of 200,000. So it costs you about 200,000 to build the thing, and so when you have the extra height, the extra floors, it's possible to spread that loss, if you will.
Of course, and that's why I agree with you. I mean, I'd prefer you have another floor and we get more affordable housing. But I just found it interesting that, you know, right out of the gate, you know, we're changing the, the proposal this evening was to change it from 25 to reduce it to 20%. And right out of the, and I heard my colleagues tonight, and their concerns are, I understand them, they're clear to me, that they feel that it's likely to deter development. And right out of the gate tonight, we don't have it deterring development, and you basically said whatever it is, it is. So, but I agree. I think, the higher the building, another floor would provide more housing, and for us, more affordable housing. But I just asked that as a learning process for myself, and I appreciate it, and I support your project. Thank you.
Questions from Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to comment on the wetland conservancy piece of this because, I was fairly outspoken on that when we were talking about this creation of this overlay district in general. So, and I was fairly skeptical about this particular parcel, but it has been subjected to reputable third-party review by Meridian Associates and found not to be applicable based on the elevation. I do understand the history of the changes that took place here in the zoning ordinance with respect to the elevations, specifically on this parcel and the adjacent parcels. But it is what it is. Those changes were made many years ago, and they are memorialized in the ordinance today, and we need to live by them. So that's the ordinance. They meet the ordinance. They meet the one certain disclaimer in the ordinance that seems to capture a very limited area that includes this parcel. So I accept that. You know, whether or not it ultimately contributes to additional flooding conditions in the vicinity and downstream, where we are right now, I guess we'll all see. Time will tell. But at this moment in time, based on what the experts have said at the request of our building commissioner to have this evaluated, they are in compliance. So similar to the comments I made on the prior application under this overlay, recently created overlay, this is another one where, although not quite as far along as the other project, this is fairly well down the road in terms of design, et cetera, and certain approvals. Again, I say this more for the benefit of other councilors, that I think in the future we really want this coming to us with these determinations already made in terms of the outputs of the site, the construction review committee and the site plan review committee, so that we have that in front of us and make decisions based on it. And the same holds true, and the ordinance specifically contemplates that the capital facility assessments will be submitted as part of the application. So we're in another one of these catch-up situations. I think we can deal with that if it's properly conditioned. I heard Attorney Kelty say that they were willing to accept those conditions. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Attorney Kelty. Is that what I heard?
Is what you heard.
Thank you. And I believe Councilor Sasslaw is positioned to place those conditions on the permit. He alluded to that in his commentary. So with that, I defer to other councilors. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Gravel.
Thank you, and good presentation. And I want to make one clarification, though, because I think what you said clearly confirmed what I said earlier, which is the addition of affordable units are running at basically break even or less. So if you can't get enough units in there, you have to eat the difference, which, based on the fact that you're on a larger parcel of land and you're allowed the added density that gets the numbers of units up, you can spread those costs even though you lose those 3 units. I guarantee you, if you were on a smaller parcel of land confined to what the other requirements were, that you wouldn't be saying, I'll take 20 or 25%.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, so I think the point was well made, and I appreciate the fact that you gave us that kind of an insight. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Councilor Sasslaw.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you. Just so for the city stenographer, when I went over the conditions that were basically agreed to, and a lot of them were from the Memorandum of Community Development, are you comfortable with that you'll be able to interpret that? Thank you. So with those conditions that have already been stated and agreed by the petitioner, including the meter reader board, I'd like to add the last condition. In accordance with Section 12 of the City of Peabody zoning ordinance, the applicant shall meet with the Construction Review Committee and then, subsequently, complete the site plan review process. In addition to the requirement of Section 12, such activity with the Construction Review Committee and subsequently the Planning Board shall consider, 1, all site and design criteria identified in Section 6.16.4, and 2, all points raised in the communication related to this matter from the Community Development and Planning Board dated July 3rd, 2019, related to site and design. All documented recommendations of the Construction Review Committee and the Planning Board shall be considered binding conditions of the special permit. Further, in accordance with Section 6.13.3L and Section 6.14.4.9 of the City of Peabody zoning ordinance, a capital facility assessment is required, and whereas determined by the Construction Review Committee and the Planning Board that the applicant shall contribute to capital improvements, the applicant shall make such contributions in the amounts in the manner prescribed in Section 6.16.4.9, and such obligation to contribute to the capital improvements shall be considered binding conditions of the special permit. With those special conditions, I move to approve the application from Cy Tenney Residence LLC, 194 Newbury Street, Peabody, Mass. For special permit seeking to construct 60 condominiums and further seek a waiver, of 60 condominiums at 190 rear Newbury Street, Assessors Map 35, Parcel 38A, Peabody, Mass. Is filed in accordance with Sections 6.1, 6.16, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Gravel,
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, 1 absent.
Thank you very much, councilors.
Move to report of committees. Yeah, for a second. Council Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, we met, the Industrial Community Development Committee met, and those in attendance were myself, Councilor Sasslaw, Councilor McGinn, Councilor Razignol, Councilor Charist. There are 2 items on the agenda. There's a presentation by a health director of an ordinance change recommended. It was very in-depth and detailed and thorough. It showed the amount of work that Health Director Cameron had put into it. There was also a presentation by the mayor of the need to change our trash collection method in barrels that are covered for both trash and recycling. What we did was we discussed in detail the ordinance that Health Director Cameron had put forward, and we also discussed the potential change in our trash collection system. Motion was made by Councilor McGinn to adopt the recommended ordinance presented by the Health Director Cameron, and that vote passed 5-0.
That's a motion to adopt and advertise, correct?
Sorry, motion to adopt and advertise.
Sorry, a motion to advertise. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We also, we had a second item on the agenda, the reduction of affordable housing units from 25% to 20%. And there was much discussion on this. There was public participation and discussion also by my fellow councilors. And motion was made by Councilor Sasslaw to reduce the percentage of affordable housing from 25 to 20% and send this recommendation to the planning board. So moved. I'm sorry, that passed 5-0. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor? Any, Councilor
We
Manning?
get a roll call, please?
Roll call vote on the motion.
Councilors Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
No.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Charis,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel,
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-1.
That is the report out of Industrial Community Development, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Counselor. And for the Finance Committee, Counselor Gravel.
Thank you, Council President. This evening, the Finance Committee met. Sitting for the committee were myself as chair, Councilor Gould, Councilor Manning Martin, Councilor McGinn, and Councilor Rozignol. All other members were in participation except for the absence of Councilor O'Neill. There was one item on the agenda, which was the adoption of General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F3/4, which sets up the PEG access and cable-related fund. Basically, it was explained to us that the purpose of the fund was, one, to provide some transparency in terms of franchise fee collections as well as other fee collections from the Cable Commission being allocated to a singular fund to be used for capital improvements as well as ongoing educational and educational uses within the community, still under the control of the City Council by a supermajority vote. Therefore, a motion was made to adopt GL Chapter 44, Section 53F3/4, and create an account and cable-related fund effective July 1st, 2019. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Motions, orders, and resolutions. Counselor Mitsoulas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under suspension of the rules, I'd like to go to item 8G and 8H. Motion to receive and set up a public hearing.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Also, Mr. Chairman, on my desk is a late communication for a junk dealer's license at 58 Pulaski Street. Like to make a motion to receive and set up a public hearing.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
And also, Mr. Chairman, I have no motions, and I wish everybody a nice little vacation, nice little break. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Melville.
No motions this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Counselor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8B. So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8C. So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. On suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8D. So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. On suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8J. So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. No further motions.
Counselor Rozignol.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive late communication for banner requests and approve all papers being in order for the International Fest as well as for PBU soccer. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to make a motion for the DPW to please repair multiple potholes in front of 3 Stockton Road. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. No further motions.
Thank you, Counsel. Counsel Manning Martin.
No motions, Mr. President.
Thank you, Counsel. Counselor Sasslaw.
Yes, and the suspension of rules, motion to receive item 8A.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
On the suspension of rules, motion to receive item 8F.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Motion to receive late communication approving block party August 17th, Benevento Circle. So move. And approve? Move and approve.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
And just want to motion, I'd like to make a motion that Department of Public Services please put up the no parking signs on both sides of Lakeland Park Drive. They have not been up there, and maybe it's an oversight, but just like to send them a little reminder if they could get those signs up as soon as possible. We passed that ordinance a while ago. And other than that, wish my colleagues a good summer, and I hope everyone had a great July 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Charest.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to move to accept under Lake Communications, subject to everything being in order, for the Orchard Street block party. So move.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Also like under the suspension of rules to ask for a speed limit sign to be installed on for south going north on Forest Street, closest to the Summit Street end. So move.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
We'd like a speed limit sign to be put up on Prospect Street going north, going south towards the mall end. So move.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
I'd like to, under suspension of rules, move to accept 8I and set up for a special permit hearing.
All in favor?
Mr. Chairman?
Any opposed? It's a vote.
Mr. Chairman, on that? Mr. Chairman?
It's a vote. Councilor
Mr. Chairman.
Charest.
You said all in favor, any opposed? I'm motioning that I wanted to
Councilor
remark.
Manning on the motion.
Thank you. Through you to Councilor Charest. On 8I, I was hoping that you may be amenable to reach out to the petitioner to see if they would mutually agree to an extension on the public hearing. And I ask that because, as you all know, we got this on June 27th, and we don't meet again until August 11th. And there's a 65-day requirement we have to the date of filing, which again was June 27th, in order to set up the public hearing. And there are two items on this special permit that I feel I would be more prepared, and I think this council would be more prepared, because I've never seen a cluster development issue come before us. So I was hoping that we could, now if this had happened earlier in the year and not during our summer break, we would be able to refer the matter, which I would, to Legal Affairs to vet the issue. So the cluster development, I'd like to vet that further, because I'm not familiar with the cluster development. It hasn't come before us since I've been on the council. So I would question how it applies with respect to the open space for the J.B. Thomas project. And also the mention of to utilize a non-conforming use for that area is also confusing to me, because I believe that in the application they wish to demolish the building. So I don't know how you would be able to continue to use something that you've demolished to continue that non-conforming use. So that would be something that I would
Council, a point of
request
information.
to go to-
This was a motion to receive, which we haven't received. So what are you referring to different committees?
Well, if you allow me to finish speaking, perhaps your question will be answered. Thank you. So that would be something that I would refer to Legal Affairs to vet as well. And now if this were something like a handheld car wash or used car lot on Route 1, I wouldn't be as concerned to not be able to vet those issues. But this is a huge development that's going to be in a residential area at the J.B. Thomas Hospital site. So I do have those two questions that, given that it's been dropped on us on June 27th during our summer break, we don't have any time in between to vet those issues, that I think that the neighborhood deserves a thorough vetting. And I think that referring them at, if we if I, again, could ask the ward councilor, because it is within our ordinances, through the construction of approval through state law, that we could get a mutually agreed upon extension. So I would be asking that of the ward councilor to reach out, if possible, if he agrees, to get an extension from the petitioner so that we don't get up against construction approval, because we only have 65 days. So this is not a good time for this project to have been proposed on June 27th, which the ward council has no control over. It is when the petitioner proposed it. But that leaves us with no time to vet two very different, unique issues for a very important neighborhood issue, and it's a big project. So I would ask the ward councilor to please do that.
Council Trust.
Council President, this is a little unique of a request, because this was just to accept the application. My understanding that discussion on this doesn't happen when you move to accept and set for a public hearing. So that, the request that you're making, I understand, I would have certainly been more inclined to attempt to reach out to the attorney who happened to be here tonight to ask if that request would be made if I was notified prior tonight. But at the last minute of the meeting tonight, they asked us to reach out to the petitioner to see if they will reschedule and stuff like that. I think is a little unfair. I think on the part of them, I'm sure they have a game plan, a set time and anything. I would personally have no problem doing it, but I just think at the last minute of asking me, when all we really to do is to make a motion to accept the application and set up a public hearing, that doesn't mean that that public hearing can't be put off until September, October. Our job is to accept the application, hearing application, to set up a public meeting. I don't even believe we should be discussing this as much as we are. So move.
On the motion to receive, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Council Trust, you have the floor back.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to also thank everyone for the participation in Ward 4, 4th of July picnic, all the volunteers. I know some of the councilors at large showed up. It was a great egg toss. I know Councilor Manny Martin participated with my daughter and came very, very close in winning that, so that was enjoyable to see.
I was in traction the next day. So that's when you're getting old, when the egg toss throws you back out.
You were doing a great job. And I also like to wish Councilor Gould and his wife a very happy anniversary. So move.
Was there a motion there? I'm sorry, I was straightening out some housekeeping. Councilor Gravel.
Thank you, Council President. Just for the edification of the councilors who are still here, this week on Monday, I had the opportunity to have my property vandalized by the Comcast folks who felt that they sent a Picasso wannabe to my property and literally painted the entire front of it with orange spray paint, the ground, the sidewalk, the flower bed, etc. It made me quite aware of the fact that if this has happened to me, it's probably happened to others. And during the rest of the week, I've been with Councilor Turco trying to find out who do you get to talk to when something like this happens. And again, having access as a councilor to a lot of different services, it made me quite aware again that for the average citizen and the average residents, that luxury is not necessarily afforded or known. And it bothered me because, you know, supposedly your property is your property, And I understand that DigSafe has to do their thing, and I understand that we have utility easements for the purpose of allowing them access to our properties. But I think without any notice to have somebody come down and literally, the pictures will probably be in the paper, literally just deface it, and was beyond my wildest imagination as to what was by right something that can be done. And through the process, I also learned that we were supposed to be notified that something was going to happen, that there was a potential for a dig, and that there would be people coming out to mark the property. Basically, the people just came out and marked up the property, and when approached by my daughter as to, you know, what or why they were doing it, basically being told it was none of her business, and that they have every right in the world to do what they were doing. Again, I don't know if that's the truth or not. I'm still investigating and trying to find out myself. But it made me think, you know, one of the things, I wouldn't want this to happen to any resident. I don't think it's fair. Your property is your property. They do have to come on and do certain things. I get it. But they should not have to, and maybe they don't have to ask permission, but they should at least tell you what they plan to do and when they plan to do it, and make provisions for restoration of your property to the condition it was in prior to when they came. And I've looked in our ordinances, there's nothing that says that. And it's kind of like a thing that you find out, you know, from the people that are called the locators, that they are required, anybody that does the construction is required to put it back the way it was. With that, I'd like to make a motion to send to our legal subcommittee a request to create an ordinance that protects our residents from this type of behavior in such a way that no utility can commence marking up your property until you've been notified that they're going to be doing that, so that you can properly be prepared when they arrive, and, you know, look out for your own interests. Because if you're not looking out for them, I don't think they are. This person that painted my property just basically wanted to get out of there. It was 5 o'clock. I didn't get a chance to meet him personally, but he did tell my daughter that he was in a hurry because he had to be home. I'm hoping that we can craft an ordinance with some teeth that also addresses the issue of not only the residents, but the city as a whole, because many of us have seen multiple times where they dig a hole for the utilities, or they rip up a street for the utilities, and they give you half of what you had in return. They'll put a patch on it, and there'll be no concern that that street is then ruined forever. So I think we can control that by ordinance, and so I'd like to have the legal subcommittee take that up when we come back in August and September, and I'll make that in the form of a motion. So moved.
On the motion, Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President, and completely agree with Councilor Gravel's commentary on that, and I'm particularly glad that you added the need to address this on public property. It blew my mind after the first MassWorks project on Main Street. The project probably wasn't completed more than 2 weeks before they came out and started, you know, doing the DigSafe thing for something else that should have all been contemplated long before the MassWorks project. You know, that was all in the design that should have been done. So, just as Councilor Gravel says, I get that they have to do that, but they're having no obligation to go in and clean it up after the fact. That's the part that really bothers me. So I think it's a great idea. I'm very willing to take that on in legal affairs. Thank you, Mr. President.
On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
No further motions.
I just had two motions myself. Earlier last year, I had proposed an ordinance change for Section 2019-94 entitled Parking Prohibited on Certain Streets for Veterans Memorial Drive on the northerly side before the intersection of Lynn Street to the point of 50 feet east of the entrance gate to the front parking lot of the property located at 200 Lynn Street. I'm told that those coordinates were erroneous, so I'm going to withdraw or move to rescind that section of the ordinance as stated above. On the motion? All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. And I have a second motion regarding a crosswalk at Radden Park. I'd like to a motion to have Public Services install a crosswalk from Radden Park across the street toward the property they'll know as the Stonewood Plaza for the safety of the children crossing back and forth to that park. On the motion, Councilor Sasla?
No, just when you finish, if I could, I just forgot something, thank you.
I will add on that motion has been made before, and I'm 100% in support of it. There should be a crosswalk there. It should be a well-defined crosswalk. I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you, Councilor. To the clerk, I'll add to that motion to make it a better defined crosswalk in the sense that it be painted completely yellow for visibility reasons. And I have no further motions. Councilor Sasla.
My apologies. I'd like to make, you just, I reminded this crosswalk. I'd like to make a motion that the Department of Public Services install, that they repaint the crosswalk at Peabody Road where the bike path crosses. So move.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote.
And I'd also like to make a motion that the Department of Public Services repaint the crosswalk on Albert Road where the bike path crosses. So move. Thank you.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Can somebody receive item 8E for me?
Move to receive.
All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Item 8G. What is it? Is that L or M? 8M. M. It was received and sent to subcommittee, but we need to receive it in the regular meeting.
Move to receive, refer to Industrial and Community Development.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. 9A. Council Melville?
Move to renew junk dealer's license with all papers being in order for Ginger Closet, 101 Lynn Street. You want me to just take the taxi and limousine?
All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote if you don't mind. 9B.
Move to approve taxi and limousine driver's license, John Marley, license 13, Diego Pacheco, license 14, Charles T. Diorio, license 16, Matthew Diorio, license 17, Bruce Schwartz, license 18, Michael Fitzpatrick, license 19, Stephen Bouchard, license 20, Rex Kent, license 21. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Item 10A.
Move to adopt an ordinance amending Section 1820 entitled Schedule of Compensation for Part-Time Positions and Section 1821 entitled Rates of Compensation for Full-Time Positions Not Subject to Collective Bargaining of the Code of the City of Peabody as advertised. So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed?
No. Get a roll call. These are,
Roll call vote.
yeah, these should be roll calls.
Councilors Melville,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol, Manning Martin,
No.
Sasla,
Yes.
Charis,
Yes.
Gravel,
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1.
Item 10B, move to adopt as advertised an ordinance amending Section 1241 entitled The Fire Department Established Composition Appointment of Members of Article 3 Fire Department of the Code of the City of Peabody. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Melville,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
No.
Sasla,
Yes.
Charis,
Yes.
Gravel,
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1.
10C, move to adopt as advertised an ordinance amending Section 18 to 18C, which establishes the rates of compensation for police and fire personnel, and amending the ordinance establishing the fringe benefits for the police and fire department of the Code of the City of Peabody. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Which should be 10D, ready
10D.
for council adoption. So I move to adopt as advertised an ordinance amending Chapter 7 entitled Buildings and Building Regulations of the Code of the City of Peabody. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
And the last one is...
Council, that's actually going to be moved to the next regularly scheduled meeting due to
The next one is to move it to the next regular meeting.
item 10E. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Council President, I would ask...
Council Sasla.
Thank you. On 10A, you caught me off guard with the roll call vote. I'd like to change my vote to no for the record, if that's okay.
Can you do that?
The city clerk would not allow me to do that, please, for the record. 10A, I vote no on that ordinance. I can do motion for reconsideration if you'd like, just to get that in there. I'd like to make...
Let's make it easy for him. We'll do it the right way. A motion for reconsideration
Thank you, Council Gravel.
of you wanted A, right?
Correct, sir.
And move to reconsider item A as previously voted, which is an ordinance amending section 18 to 20 entitled Schedule of Compensation for Part-Time Positions, and section 18 to 20 entitled Rates of Compensation for Full-Time Positions not subject to collective bargaining. And the vote for reconsideration would be yes.
On the motion, roll call
Councilors
vote.
Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Sasla. Charis.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Matter is reconsidered 8-0.
So
Now we'll take a revote.
the motion would be made to adopt as advertised an ordinance amending section 18 to 20 entitled Schedule of Compensation for Part-Time Positions, and section 18 to 21 entitled Rates of Compensation for Full-Time Positions not subject to collective bargaining of the Code of the City of Peabody. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Melville.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Sasla.
No.
Charis.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-2.
Thank you, councilors, for my faux pas. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you. Through you to Councilor Gravel. You mentioned an E, Councilor Gravel, and I don't have E on my agenda. What was E? Mine stops at D.
There were two Cs.
It should be E, Council, if it's the water and sewer rates. It's
It should have been...
10D on your
It's
All right, so
listed
10D, I voted,
No.
10D, we
Yeah.
moved to the next agenda.
was water and sewer?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was 10C?
10C would have been the
10C.
actual ABC. The one that was out of sequence was the ready for the ordinance amending Chapter 7, the building and building permits.
Mind if I come look at my agenda is wrong. I didn't have two Cs and I have no E. I just want to make sure I voted for what I wanted to vote for.
Sure.
Thank you for indulging me. So that was on building permits? Okay, thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, Council McGinn, we're going to stay a little while longer.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was one other late communication on our desk. This was with respect to a transfer of a lodging house license, and I object to the late communication.
There's no motion.
No motion. You know, if any one counselor objects, it can't be brought in until the next meeting.
Thank you, Councilor. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councilor Gravel.